Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And I just went and got my hair cut, so I probably have hair all over my shirt. I'm actually going to grow it out a little bit longer for the summer. Not like long, but just a little bit longer so I can style it a little bit easier. So I didn't get much cut, I just trimmed it a little bit. Or I didn't trim it, but my hairstylist trimmed it a little bit. So anyway, I brought a bunch of books with me today, and I thought I would get right into the meditations. I brought the 2 Melody Beatty books with me. I also bought a daily book of you guys know this one, the Daily Book of Positive Quotations. And I also brought the Meditations for Living in Balance, which I love this book. And I love it so much that I'm throwing it behind me. And then I brought this one, Believing in Myself, Daily Meditations for Healing and Building Self-Esteem. I haven't read much from this book, but I thought that we would try this one today. So let me get into this one about self-esteem, and let's see what it has to say to us today. It is January 24th. Here we go. January 24th. Divorce is the psychological equivalent of a triple bypass. It takes years to amend all the habits and attitudes that led up to it. Mary Kay Blakely. Who among us would shout, "Hurry up," to someone on crutches? Or tell a bleeding accident victim, "Snap out of it"? No one could be that unrealistic or insensitive, right? Wrong. That's exactly what we do to ourselves when we expect instant recovery from major life traumas. As unrealistic expectations go, that's about as unrealistic as it can get. People who have recently experienced divorce or the loss of any once loved reality in their lives are especially vulnerable to this self-harassment. Somehow we think we can skip right over the rehabilitation period that must follow so serious an injury. After all, there is not only the loss itself to be dealt with, but all the habits, patterns, and systems that grew out of this relationship. How unreasonable to expect that all of this can be dismantled immediately. Even if we're glad the relationship is over, divorce is loss, and loss requires grieving, reflection, and healing. We not only have the right to heal, we have a responsibility to take all the time we need. Common sense, as well as self-esteem, forbids us to order ourselves to hurry up what can't be hurried. How long does it take to heal? It takes as long as it takes. Wow, I love this meditation. And I am going to title this video something like Divorce, and I know that people are going to watch it because they're going to think that my husband and I are getting divorced or something, and no, that's not the case, thankfully, today. But there was a period that I thought that my husband and I were headed towards divorce. I actually thought we were going to get divorced, and then we entered marriage counseling, and things turned around, thankfully. And I honestly think that all had to happen for us to be at this point in our relationship today that I am so thankful for. But I have gone through 2 major breakups in my life, and they were devastating to me at the time that I went through them, you know. I've dated a lot in my life, but I really talk about only 3 major relationships that I've had, because those were the 3 relationships that I've had since I've been sober, in sobriety, where I was a functioning adult and, was a participant in these relationships, a healthy participant to some degree in these relationships. And the first one was my first boyfriend that I had when, I dated a couple people right after treatment, but then my first boyfriend, I started dating towards the end of my first year, and then he and I were together about 4.5, 5 years. My next boyfriend and I were together for, with my first boyfriend, we had a lot of fun. I loved him, and he's really a great guy to this day. I don't really interact with him much. I don't really interact a lot with any of my exes. I'm civil towards them, thankfully. I'm somebody that I think it's amazing when people have friendships down the road with their exes. That is not something that I desire in my life. I don't really want to know the goings-ons of that person's relationships. We shared a very intimate, special time together, and I've always kind of had that boundary in my life that once it's over, it's not like I completely forget about you. I try to remember the good times and reminisce about that and tell stories. And I do that a lot. Like if you watch my vlog, I tell a lot of stories about myself with my exes. I choose not to live in it, but also not romance it and remember that they're my exes for a reason. But I also did spend special time with them in my life and traveled and had family interactions as well. So I don't want to just act like it didn't matter. Actually, one of, I wouldn't necessarily say a pet peeve, but one of the things that kind of hurts my heart for people is when they will get divorced or they get broken up with somebody and they'll say, well, it was nothing about it was ever real to begin with, or that person didn't mean anything to me, or I obviously didn't mean anything to them. And that's just not true. It just isn't. Or when people refer to their divorce as a failed marriage, I don't love that, because it's not. It just, you fell out of love and people weren't doing the work, but there were times that were fantastic in that relationship. And I think the trick is to really be able to focus on to divorce somebody or to end a relationship or a breakup. And it could be a friendship too. I think friendships are sometimes like that. Is very, very difficult. And I've said in many videos that I think it's harder than actually losing somebody that passes away, because that person continues to go on and live their life. That person you can see on Instagram, and I think social media makes it so much more difficult now than it did in the past, because we didn't have that. But I think to be able to get on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever and see that person is continuing to live their life or dating new people or meeting new people is so hard, right? Which is why I always tell my girlfriends that are going through that. They'll say, oh, he's dating this person and we've only been broken up for 3 months or 3 weeks or whatever. And I'm like, delete them from Instagram and block them. Well, but what if I delete them from Instagram and block them? And then they'll say something like, well, I can't delete their family. And I'm like, you're not part of their family anymore. I know, but I was part of they're going to meet somebody else, possibly get married. They have a new family, just let it go. And they're like, I know, but let it go. Why are you dialing up pain, as my best friend always says. Why are you dialing up pain and going and looking for those things that are going to be so painful for you? Remember the good times and, set it aside and move through the pain. I think we don't allow ourselves the ability to really grieve the loss of a relationship. And we tell ourselves, it's time for me, this divorce is over and I'm single again, like that Trina song back in the day that I loved. And it's time for me to get in my single body and wear hot clothes, and I'm going to get the man or the woman and I'm going to show everybody that and I went through that. I did, and it was hard because it was I remember when my ex and I broke up, and I was in the gym every day working out. I lost 40 pounds, and and it was both of us that wanted out of the relationship. It wasn't just one of us, and the whole idea of who broke up with who, I think is so high school. Why do we even discuss that? It's always this badge of honor. Well, I broke up with, who cares? I don't know. I don't actually want to be the person that breaks up with somebody because I think that hurts. I was, because I knew my ex wasn't going to do anything about it. But the previous relationship to that, I was broken up with, and it hurt, It really, he told me he wasn't in love with me anymore, and I said, I think we need to end things, But I think it's so hard, it's so difficult, and you go through this kind of metamorphosis where you're I'm gonna be this hot, my neighbor is walking behind our house, and I'm like, please do not let the dog see him. And, but anyway, I think you go through this metamorphosis where you're I have to be this hot version of myself, all so that I can get somebody. So if I can get somebody, what that tells me is I still have it. And this divorce or this breakup didn't take me down. And it's just ridiculous to think that way, It took me all of the, and hell, did I say hell? Hey, I went through all of these breakups before, before I ever got sober, that were really painful for me. And I really lived under the belief that I needed a man to complete me, that I was not good enough on my own. Flash forward, to 5 years ago or 7 years ago, I don't know when it was now, that we were in marriage counseling, and, my counselor asked me something to the effect of, do you think if you and Alex broke up, you'd be okay? And it was a paramount question, because I was under the belief that I did not think I could survive if my husband and I broke up. I couldn't even imagine what my life would be like if he weren't in my life, even though we weren't getting along, even though I was more upset, angry, sad, and miserable with him. I couldn't imagine my life without him because I was going back to that last breakup, and I could remember the day that we broke up. I can remember the minute that we broke up, that 5 seconds later, we no longer knew each other. We were no longer in each other's lives. And he was my best friend. And that was painful, you know, because I lost not only a boyfriend, but I lost a best friend. And it was hard. And I didn't want to go through that again. So I remember when the counselor asked me that, and he said, if you and Alex, you know, divorced and broke up, would you be okay? And I thought about it, and I was like, I would be okay. Eventually, I would be okay, because I have been okay before. I've gone through that, and I've made it to the other side, and I've gone through the pain. And the last time I really allowed myself to feel the pain, you know, and I was, you know, really did some work, and on myself, because I allowed myself to take some time before getting right back out there again and really getting to know who Peter was, you know, at 35 years old. And so when the counselor asked me that, I was like, yeah, I would be okay. And he was like, so you don't need your husband? And I said, I don't need him, I want him. He said, so you choose for Alex to be in your life? And I said, yes. And he said, and Alex chooses for you to be in his life? And I said, yes. And it was like this light bulb went off. I was like, wow. To choose to have somebody in your life, or for them to choose to be in your life, is such a privilege and such an honor, but it's not dependency, you know? I don't need, I mean, I had almost this physical dependency where I couldn't imagine my life if I didn't have somebody in it. And I really defined myself based on having somebody. Like, I went from monogamous to monogamous relationship. I mean, I always tell people, like, I was promiscuously monogamous because I went from long-term relationship to relationship. I had to have a boyfriend to some degree. I didn't know who I was if I didn't have a boyfriend. In fact, the moment that I got out of treatment, one of my very dearest friends was telling me about this guy that I met the last night that I was using, that he kept on asking about me, and he had a great job, and he was highly educated, and he was a really nice guy, and he was good looking, and I was like, ding, 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 this person's interested in me? Wow. Like, okay, that completes me. And it was that whole Jerry Maguire thing, you know, this fairy tale romance that we see in movies and TV show that, like, a relationship will complete us. That's completely absurd. It's absolutely absurd. We need to be able to be of value to ourselves before we can be of value to somebody else. And no, that's not a Peter Monn original. It's on a back of a coin, a recovery coin. But we do. We need to be of value to ourselves before we can be of value to somebody else. And, you know, and I learned that. And then what I realized was, wow, I'm choosing to be in this relationship, but I'm going to be just fine if we're not. And then what I had to do was I had to work on myself. I had to work on myself so that I could be healthy in this relationship that I was choosing to be in. And if I wasn't in a relationship, what I would have done is worked on myself so I could be healthy for the next relationship that I was in. Not just get in a relationship because I think it's going to fix all of my problems. And I had done that for a very long time. You know, as long as there was somebody there that loved me or thought I was cute or attractive or wanted to be around me or wanted to be with me, then I felt fantastic until they didn't want to anymore, you know? And then it was like I was just devastated because who was I if I wasn't in a relationship? And I think it's really important, you know? And I think the other thing that's important is really giving yourself time. My mom, you know, my parents got separated when I was like 5 or 6. And my mom dated a little bit throughout her life. My mom had very strong religious and I think personal convictions. Like, you know, she would say to me that she didn't want to have sex before marriage, and most men wouldn't, like as she was older, wouldn't marry if they didn't have sex before marriage. And so she was like, none of these guys are going to want to marry me, but she held to that. You know, she really struggled with it. And she would always say, like, I just, you know, want to know, like, what I did wrong in this relationship with your dad. Where then I'm having conversations with my dad, asking him what happened. And he said, it's simple, Peter. Your mom and I fell out of love, and it just, we weren't in love anymore, you know? But she would hold on to that forever and ever and ever, to the point of where it just, like, it drove her crazy. She thought she did something wrong. When my parents got separated, my dad told my mom that he was leaving like 6 months before. He said, if things don't change, I'm leaving. My mom literally, she used to talk about this, how she went from like a size 10 to a size 0 in 6 months, or a size 2 or something like that. I mean, she lost massive amounts of weight in this attempt to save this marriage when that had nothing to do with what was wrong with the marriage. What was wrong with the marriage was they had fallen out of love, you know? And that's really hard when you're at that point to really salvage the marriage. divorce is so hard, and I think you really have to give yourself time, whether it's a breakup or whether it's a divorce, and I don't think there's really much difference, except for the legality of it, but you really have to give yourself time and allow yourself time to take care of yourself, you know? Like, you know, and I have girlfriends of mine, I'm not going to say boyfriends, but, you know, guy friends of mine, that they get out of a relationship and they get right into another relationship literally in a week or two. And I've done it, you know, I'm not proud of it, but I've done it. And they've lasted. Those relationships have lasted for those people. You know, not all of them. Some of them, like, they go from relationship to, you know, they're just looking for the solution. But I have had friends that have jumped from relationship into another one, and the next relationship lasts for many, many years, and they're very happy, you know. So I don't know that there's any, like, specific answer to it. I just know that you have to feel the grief that you go through in, you know, losing that relationship and that person that's in your life. I think the hardest thing for me was just not talking to him anymore, you know, just not riding in a car next to him and us having our funny inside jokes. I missed that, you know, but we couldn't have that anymore. I remember I called him, my ex, like after 2 months of us being broken up. And I mean, we would talk from time to time, but I remember I called him and it was late at night, and I was like panicking, and I was like, just come over, like, let's, you know, and I actually was the one that said, like, let's make things, or I was the one that said, let's break up. Not that it matters, but, because later he said to me, like, I also was unhappy and wanted to get out of the relationship, but I didn't know how to end it. And what happened was I came home from work one day and he said, this is what's going on. Like, you need to make a decision. And I said, I think it's over. And then that was how it all started, that day of it ending. So I called him 2 months later and I was like, I missed him. I missed being in a relationship. I missed his friendship. And I called him and I said, just come over. We can make things work. You know, we'll talk, blah, 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 whatever. Just come over and sleep here. Sleep on the couch. I don't care. And he said, you wanted out of this relationship. Now let me get over you. And I remember being devastated and calling my friend, and she said, he's right, you know, like, you got to allow yourself to feel the pain and the loss and the grief of losing that relationship, you know, but you're going to be okay. And I was. I sat on patios of friends of mine and cried my eyes out and bawled my eyes out. That summer, I can remember I went to visit my friend in Denver. And, you know, I sat on his patio and I said, I really want to talk about this. And he said, he was never a huge fan of my ex. And he said, why? And I said, because I want to talk about this. I need to talk about this. I said, I think I might want to get back together with him. I didn't even know if he wanted to get back together with me or not. But I said, I want to, you know, I'm thinking about it. And he goes, you guys broke up for a reason. Remember that. So he entertained this conversation with me, talking about it. He was like, do you feel better? And I was like, I mean, no. He was like, if tomorrow, if nothing changed in how that relationship was, would you take him back? And I mean, we weren't great. I mean, there was nothing horrible in the relationship. We just weren't happy. And he said, my friend looked at me and he goes, if you could get right back in that relationship exactly where it left off, with no work having been done, would you? And I was like, no. And he was like, do you want something more? Yeah, I did. You know, but the comfort and the safety of that relationship, I think I clung to in a really, really unhealthy way, because I was so terrified of what it might be like if I was actually alone, what that would look like, you know? And I didn't want to be alone. I wanted somebody, you know, to be beside me. I can remember talking to my mom years before that. You know, this was probably after my breakup with my first boyfriend. And, you know, we were watching like Jerry Springer, and these two guys were fighting over this woman. And I said, she has two guys fighting over her, and I can't even get one. And my mom was like, Peter, nobody is promised a partner in life. You're lucky if you find love one time, you know? I think about that sometimes, but I think it's really, really important that we don't push ourselves too hard, that we allow ourselves that time to grieve that relationship and love ourselves so that we can be of value to ourselves, and then prepare ourselves for that next relationship should it come our way. Anyway, I love this meditation, and I love you guys. And let me know what you think in the comment section below. And I love you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.